Hello, everyone. Dr. Vanessa here. Sorry if I kept anyone waiting. Meant to start at 4, but I'm here now. So, uh, just wanted to mention the game that we have going on right now at the clinic called Brigo or Brio Bingo. And I've just used my personal stamp to go ahead and check off some of the squares that I've done since we launched less than a week ago. And I wanted to thank Dr. Lee for teaching us 3 acupressure points in his Facebook Live yesterday. So that's column I and row 2, this one right here, where you're supposed to learn 3 acupressure points. And if you already know a ton, then we encourage you to learn 3 more. So this past Wednesday, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. Annually, we are reminded that as humans are the environmental stewards of the planet. In exchange for unlimited access to nature's bounty, our job, or I feel it's our job, to protect, care for, and responsibly use the Earth's resources. When we fight for clean air, clean water, and clean soil, it not only provides a brighter future for the generations that follow, but also cleaner food and medicine for us today. Hippocrates famously said, "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." Further, the Hippocratic Oath is an ethical oath historically taken by doctors. Naturopathic doctors have something similar. So this Hippocratic Oath is taken by new medical graduates. It's a rite of passage. And a key tenet of the oath is primum non nocere. Excuse my Latin. First, do no harm. We're either supposed to help or do no harm to our patients. For me, this also applies to the planet, if we are indeed her stewards. Isn't a healthy planet one that's filled with healthy and happy people? Today's Facebook Live is entitled Everyday Plant Medicine at Home. Whether you have a green thumb or a black thumb, someone who couldn't keep a cactus alive, you only need to go as far as your kitchen or take a look outside your window to find medicinal plants or herbs and nurture your inner herbalist. From culinary herbs and spices to common weeds like dandelion, red clover, chickweed, and plantain, we are surrounded by plants that can help and heal us. Technically speaking, herbs are defined as plants without woody stems, but the term is also used to describe plant matter with medicinal purposes. Before the 19th century and the rise of modern medicine, traditional remedies and cures were largely made from plant, and sometimes mineral and animal matter too. You can still witness this if you stroll past a Chinese herbal medicine store. The sometimes pungent odors and endless rows of drawers and glass jars still beckon my curiosity. In fact, it was my gateway into naturopathic medicine. Before I discuss the use of herbs, I want to acknowledge that some believe that herbs are ineffective or inferior medicines, things that were used prior to the discovery of synthetic drugs, and their traditional use is simply based on folklore, outdated theories, and even myths. Now, I know you, my audience, are unlikely to fall into this group, But I did want to acknowledge that. I get some flack sometimes from friends. So in fact, some of the most common pharmaceutical drugs or conventional medicines we use now are derived from or inspired by constituents or active ingredients found in plants. Today, about 40% of our prescription medicines come from plant extracts or are synthesized from plant compounds. To me, whether they are a source of compounds to isolate and synthesize, then market as drugs, or used in a more holistic manner, I believe they still ought to be respected and appreciated, if not revered. I'm going to now tell you the botanical version of how aspirin was discovered and touch on the representative example of the class of plant compounds it stemmed from. So I invite you to sit back in your chair and relax as you listen to this story. Don't worry, I won't read verbatim from my plant textbooks. So almost everyone has or will use aspirin at one point or another, also known as ASA for acetylsalicylic acid. Aspirin is modeled after salicin, which was first identified in white willow. However, the effect of a plant is not, or rarely ever, attributed to one single constituent. The beneficial effects are often due to the different ways the whole plant naturally acts in synergy with our bodies. White willow research began in the early 19th century, where chemists crudely extracted salicylic acid, not salicin, which I spoke of earlier, from white willow bark. Salicylic acid is known to thin the blood. This effect may or may not be desired and can be hard on the stomach. It's notorious for causing inflammation of the gastric mucosa. So remember salicin, the constituent that was first ID'd but couldn't be successfully extracted in the lab all the way back in 1829. It has a slower onset of action than aspirin, but provides longer lasting pain relief without the irreversible anti-clotting or gastric side effects. It is metabolized in the bowels, then absorbed, and further metabolized again to salicylic acid, rendering it much gentler but still effective for headaches, musculoskeletal pain, and general inflammation. It's a real shame that scientists have continued to focus on salicylic acid instead of salicin. If we focused on the side effects of salicylic acid or aspirin, then people with gastritis theoretically shouldn't use salicylate-rich herbs either. Other examples of salicylates, a larger group of polyphenols, include wintergreen, birch, poplar, and meadowsweet. But practically speaking, these herbs have actually been shown to help with some of the symptoms their constituents have been known to cause, while retaining the desired benefits. Let's take meadowsweet, for example. One of the important uses is rheumatism. That's joint pain and inflammation, such as that seen in arthritis. Individuals with moderate to severe arthritis probably already have some degree of gastritis from taking NSAIDs. These are things like aspirin and ibuprofen. NSAIDs stands for non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Those with long-term arthritis take these to manage their symptoms, and we don't want to worsen them. That's where the beauty and power of something like meadowsweet and other whole plants lies. It's been shown to be clinically effective in reducing gastric inflammation and has a long safety record with traditional use. Without going over the entire monograph, this is like an encyclopedia entry, of the whole plant and risking me mispronouncing constituents further, we can assume that there's something else that's accountable for this miraculous result. The sum of plants, is really greater and often than any individual constituent part. For a majority of people on the planet, herbal medicine agents are the only ones available. The World Health Organization estimates that around 75 to 85% of the population outside the US continues to rely on botanical medicine dispensed by traditional healers for their primary healthcare needs. So by extension, most people rely directly on plants as medicines, as they have always done. In summary, I'd like to remind you that almost half, or 40% of our prescription medicines come from plant extracts or are synthesized from compounds within them. Whole plants, whether taken as a tea, tincture, or extract, are often less toxic and more versatile than their synthetic counterparts. It's hard to pigeonhole an herb because while they've practically existed since the dawn of time, all of the different ways in which it can affect human physiology is still largely not well understood. The concept of off-label use doesn't really apply here, especially when there's infinitely more to learn. By protecting biodiversity on the planet, we allow for the continuation of research, exploration, and discovery in medicine, both pharmaceutical and botanical. I want to wish you all a happy 50th anniversary year of Earth Day and encourage you to not only do something kind for your moms, but also your Mother Earth next month. While I was planning to do this talk, my intention was to make it a lot more practical and give some examples of things you can find around your home. As I mentioned in the beginning, if you're not much of a gardener or your houseplants die, you can actually wild harvest some things respectfully in your green spaces, in your surrounding green spaces, including weeds, which often get overlooked. When you go into your kitchen, the herb and spice rack is another good place to start. So for part 2 of Everyday Plant Medicines, that is the type of information that I'll offer. Just because of the Earth Day that just passed, I just wanted to talk about it a little bit more philosophically and really encourage people to appreciate the subtleties that can come from herbs and using plants in their natural forms as opposed to individual constituents, which have a lot more scientific backing just because they do lend themselves more to scientific double-blind placebo studies, for example. Before I sign off, I just wanted to mention that Dr. Lee and myself are going to be launching a new program at Brio. It's a group virtual detox, and that's going to be starting on Monday, May 11th. And so on this coming Monday, May 4th at 5 p.m., we'll be giving a free webinar. It'll be about 30 minutes long where you can get your where you can get answers to questions if you have any. We've written about it in email, and there's also more information on social media if that interests you at all. And yeah, I have done various detox diets before, including the Metagenics Clear Change one that we're going to be using in the group virtual detox, along with juice cleanses and an elimination diet. And those are all different ways to get back to a natural state where your body isn't hindered by toxins that come from the things we eat. The products that we use on our bodies, in our bodies, in our homes, um, industrial things that are in the air that we can't see necessarily, so on and so forth. So if that interests you, please join us on Monday at 5 p.m. for the webinar, and it'll be right after the Facebook Live. That's all I have for today. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon and evening, and I'll see you next week.